Patel and all the people that are here to observe. This is our annual FBI oversight hearing. We meet today in the aftermath of the political assassination of Charlie Kirk, a school shooting, and the senseless murder of Ukrainian refugees, and also to remember several weeks ago the killings in Minnesota. Charlie Kirk was a man of God, faith, family, and country. I pray for his wife, Erica, children, the whole family. God bless you, Charlie Kirk. I've asked Director Patel for an update today on this matter. As we proceed with the hearing, Director Patel, I'd like to note that you've agreed to one 10-minute round of questioning. That's more time than your predecessor agreed to. When Director Wray appeared before this committee, he left early to go on a family vacation, and he wanted me to think it was business he had to conduct. Since your confirmation, you've been acquainted with the bureaucracy that you must reform and hold accountable, and that's no simple task. You've begun the important work of returning the FBI to its law enforcement mission. According to the FBI, since January 20th of this year, the FBI has been involved in the arrest of more than 23,000 violent criminals. This year, the FBI assisted in the arrest of more than 1,500 child predators and 300 human traffickers. And this year, the FBI helped rescue more than 4,000 children from predators. FBI teams nationwide are working alongside immigration and custom enforcement. This teamwork has resulted in the arrest and removal of a historic number of violent criminal aliens, gang members, and child sex offenders. Those are overwhelming better records than at least two of your past predecessors. During the Wray era at the FBI, headquarters to field offices to better align with their law enforcement mission. Under your leadership, the FBI has apprehended several most wanted fugitives and secured the extradition of senior leaders of the Central American gangs like MS-13. Now, it's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics. I'm going to provide examples of that today, including making public new whistleblower records. At your nomination hearing, I made public records that whistleblowers provide me about Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by antitrust Trump FBI agent Thibault. Arctic Frost then became Jack Smith's elector case against then citizen Trump and now President Trump. These new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. The case was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the group that Wray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorney Generals Association, and various Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under investigative scope of Arctic frost. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. So today, Senator Johnson and I are making these records public for the entire country to see, and I hope a lot of people are interested in seeing what government can do when various agencies have a political agenda. My investigative work has also exposed the political way in which Peter Navarro was investigated and prosecuted. When FBI agent Thibault found out that Biden's DOJ would prosecute Navarro, he said, "Wow, great." That's a quote, unquote. Through whistleblowers, I've obtained an audio recording of Special Agent Giordina and Special Agent Sebastian Gardner's delivery of a subpoena to Navarro. I'm making that audio public today. In a court document filed by the Department of Justice, Navarro's interaction with the FBI was unfairly described as, quote unquote, the word combative. That intervention with Navarro was just as the justification to later aggressively arrest him. Then we get to the Clinton Annex and the Durham Annex. The Clinton Annex showed that the Comey FBI had evidence necessary to complete the Clinton investigation, the one about her mishandling of emails and classified information, but the FBI never did its job because it never reviewed the evidence at that time. The Durbin Annex showed that the Clinton campaign had a plan to falsely tie Trump to Russia, yet the Comey FBI failed to investigate that information. Instead, the Comey FBI used the discredited Clinton campaign-funded Steele dossier to advance crossfire hurricane against Trump. Director Patel, thanks in a large part to you, both annexes were finally declassified. That may be history, but it's history to make sure we don't repeat the history of the past. And the people ought to be concerned when the weaponization of government is used in this way, whether it's done by Republicans or Democrats. Last Congress, I made public an FBI document called 1023 form that alleged a bribery scheme with the Biden family. To date, the FBI has never answered Congress whether they investigated the text messages, the audio files, and the financial records referenced in that 1023. Whistleblowers have provided my office with 2 additional FBI 1023 documents. These documents memorialize statements from FBI sources. These 2 new 1023 documents are from separate FBI confidential human sources during different years. So in total, we now have 3 different FBI confidential human sources providing information about the Biden family and potential criminal conduct. Today, Senator Johnson and I are releasing these records. Let me say this for the partisan media the people that are supposed to be policemen of our Republican form of government. We aren't saying the allegations are true. We want to know what the FBI did to fully investigate their veracity or lack thereof and what they concluded. Let's put this matter to rest one way or the other. Starting with my chairmanship, I've given one example after another of disgraceful partisan weaponization by federal law enforcement. Since the Trump administration took power, many FBI agents have been removed. The removal included agents and prosecutors who became partisan weapons that lost their way, and I've made records public to prove it. And many of my whistleblowers were aggressively retaliated against by some FBI agents who were subsequently fired. One FBI whistleblower publicly said of these terminations, quote, ensuring that they no longer work at the FBI isn't retribution, it's responsible leadership, end of quote. Which brings me to my final and favorite topic, whistleblowers. In August, 10 of my FBI whistleblowers secured compensation agreement because of your leadership, Director Patel. It included a mix of reinstatement to the FBI, reinstatement of security clearances, and monetary compensation. At the beginning of this month, another of my FBI whistleblowers got their job back. All told, across government agencies, almost 20 whistleblowers have received fixes to their retaliation. Today, you'll get a lot of grief from some members of this committee, but in the short amount of time you've been director, you've corrected whistleblower retaliation, increased transparency more than any other FBI director I've seen, whether that FBI director was appointed by Republicans or Democrats. And I've been around here more than anybody else on this committee. I yield to Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley, for holding this oversight hearing during a critical period in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. During my 4 years as chair, I held 4 hearings with then FBI Director Wray. As a reminder to Republicans who claim the Biden administration weaponized the FBI, President Biden retained Director Wray, a lifelong Republican who was President Trump's nominee for the office. After his second election, in an unprecedented move, President Trump forced out Director Wray and nominated Kash Patel, arguably the most partisan FBI director ever. Director Patel came to the FBI with a political mission, and he spelled it out in writing in detail. He wrote, government gangsters, quote, the rot at the core of the FBI is not just scandalous, it's an existential threat to our Republican form of government, end quote. And with the power of his office and the blessings of the president, he attacked the FBI with a vengeance. Mr. Patel had falsely claimed the FBI, quote, was planning January 6th for a year, end quote. He even went so far as to produce a song by the January 6 rioters who violently assaulted police officers in the Capitol. He compiled an enemies list of public servants he called government gangsters, like former FBI Director Mueller, whom Patel called, quote, an utter swamp creature. Former Trump officials who served with Mr. Patel warned us he would weaponize the FBI to protect the president's allies and target his critics. And indeed, Director Patel has already inflicted untold damage on the FBI, putting our national security and public safety at risk. Since January 20th, the Trump administration has engaged in an unprecedented purge of FBI officials, As we heard from highly credible whistleblowers, Mr. Patel was involved in directing this purge even before he was confirmed, despite his sworn testimony to this committee. It began with terminations and forced retirements of all 6 nonpartisan career officials who run all 6 branches of the FBI, assistant directors. Since then, at least 18 of the 53 special agents in charge of FBI field offices have been removed, along with many other senior officials. Individual agents have been targeted for termination simply due to the work that they were assigned, such as January 6th investigation. In fact, according to former acting FBI Director Brian Driscoll, in a lawsuit filed last week, Director Patel made this very plain, telling Driscoll personally, quote, that his own job depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, end quote. And even though he knew, quote, the nature of summary findings were likely illegal. At the same time, Director Patel has installed MAGA loyalists as political appointees in key career positions, including conspiracy theorist Dan Bongino as FBI Deputy Director, the first time in the history of the FBI that this position has not been held by a career FBI agent. Director Patel has also reportedly initiated loyalty test, requiring dozens of officials to sit for polygraph exams and answer inappropriate questions about whether they've made negative comments about him personally. Of course, as is often the case in the Trump administration, the rules apply to thee, but not to me. As we understand it from highly credible sources, key members of Director Patel's senior executive team and others on the 7th floor had disqualifying alerts on their initial polygraph exams. Well, how did they survive? They survived because of a personal waiver by either the director or the attorney general to remain employed by the Bureau. Understand the context here. Political operatives in key positions, given the routine FBI polygraph exam, failed and had to receive waivers to continue their positions. They were lucky to keep their political appointments. They were, but the 5,000 career civil servants the director has so far forced out of the Bureau's ranks were not offered that same courtesy. 5,000. This mass exodus has created a disastrous brain drain, particularly in the fields of cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and counterintelligence. For example, my office has received information indicating that cuts to the Bureau's cyber division will cut personnel by half, despite the ever-increasing threats posed by adverse foreign actors. The brain drain is exacerbated by Director Patel's misuse of remaining FBI personnel and resources to focus on other priorities of this administration. According to reports, the 25 largest FBI field offices have been ordered to divert 45% of their agents from their primary missions to work on the mass deportation of immigrants. Just as concerning is Director Patel's plan to hire fewer qualified agents by removing the college degree requirement and reducing new agent training at Quantico from 18 weeks to just 8. So we have a brain drain and a significant watering down of training. Quite a record, Mr. Patel. As recently fired special agents and others have warned, fast-tracking inexperienced and improperly trained people into critical national security jeopardizes the Bureau's ability to effectively protect America. Director Patel himself had no training or life experience for this position. The result of that incompetence is staggering. For example, after Attorney General Bondi publicly stated in February that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review, that's what she said on Fox, Director Patel diverted more than 1,000 FBI personnel from their critical missions to work on 24-hour shifts reviewing over 100,000 pages of Epstein-related records. These personnel were instructed to flag any records in which President Trump was named. But that review ended in an unsigned memorandum from DOJ and FBI stating simply, there is no incriminating client list, close quote. Director Patel still has not responded to my letter from 2 months ago asking about his role in this cover-up. On the day of the horrific shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University, Director Patel again sparked mass confusion by incorrectly claiming on social media that the shooter was in custody, which he then had to walk back with another social media post. Mr. Patel was so anxious to take credit for finding Mr. Kirk's assassin that he violated one of the basics of effective law enforcement. At critical stages of an investigation, shut up and let the professionals do their job. Notably, Director Patel recently forced out Special Agent in charge of Salt Lake City, Mayim Saeed, a counterterrorism expert with 20 years' experience, who would have led this high-profile investigation. The men and women who serve at the FBI and the American people deserve a director who has the ability and the character to restore the Bureau to its place as the preeminent law enforcement agency. I want to close on a personal note. I came of age in the 1960s. We experienced a number of horrific assassinations, including President John Kennedy, Senator Robert Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. We are going through a similar period of division and political violence. All of us in public life, on both sides of the aisle, have a responsibility to bring down the temperature and to work to unite the American people. Let's be clear, Republicans are not Nazis and Democrats are not evil, as Mr. Patel has claimed. Democrats are not responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, and Republicans were not responsible for the murder of Melissa Hordman. Our political opponents are not our enemies. We are all Americans, and we should be working together to keep the American people safe and protect their constitutional rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you please stand so I could swear? Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Please be seated, and you can give your statement now.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the committee. It's an honor to be here with you today as the 9th Director of the FBI. I want to providing a briefing into the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important that this FBI is transparent as possible without jeopardizing investigations. Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 p.m. on September 10th. I think this timeline is critically important. Less than a day later, the FBI, at my direction, released the first set of images of the suspect that we captured based on our analysis on the ground. Later that evening, while conducting extensive interviews and cell phone analysis, and also flying out evidence response teams and hostage rescue teams and evidence tacticians who were collecting evidence in live time and flying them back to Washington, D.C. in our laboratories for immediate analyses, we were able to extract video from the campus feed. And at my direction at 8 p.m., in partnership and promise to working with the public to bring this fugitive to justice, we released a newly, never before seen video of the suspect. We also released new enhanced photos of the suspect. A few hours later, that suspect was in custody, pursuant to the interrogation of the suspect's own father, who stated, "When I saw that video that you released, I recognized it was my son, and I confronted him, and he was handed over to lawful law enforcement authorities." That is the FBI working with the public, as I promised, being transparent and providing critical information along the way in the manhunt for the suspect and suspects involved in Charlie's assassination. We received over 11,000 tips in the first 24 hours alone. We received 16,000 submissions to our digital media enterprise and tip lines. That is a large number of material to go through. I want to thank President Trump and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, for their unwavering support and commitment of resources to this and all investigations. I also want to especially thank our colleagues in Utah, the Governor's Office, DPS, and the sheriffs out there. State and local law enforcement partnership has been a cornerstone since I took over at the FBI, and it was no different here. And our teams in Salt Lake City, our SACs out there across the country, our lab technicians in Quantico who raced to complete the evidence analysis so the public could have the answers they need. These people worked through the night without sleep for days on end. They are to be commended. They are not to be attacked. And many, many, many more people I don't have time to thank here today. But I do want to thank the American people especially. The mission of the FBI is for them and with them and by, with, and through them. And it's that mission and that ethos that I brought to this investigation and so many others, and that's why that suspect is in custody. We cannot do our job without the American public and credible reporting in the media, and that's why Tyler Robinson is in custody today, about to face charges. The last time I appeared before this committee was in January for my confirmation hearing. I told you then that if I were confirmed, I would provide and do everything I can to provide a safe and secure America. I promise to provide the courageous men and women of the FBI the tools and resources they need to crush violent crime and defend the homeland. I pledge myself to commit to full transparency, oversight, and accountability so we could restore the public's trust in the FBI. And that's exactly what I've done. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals. That's more than twice for the same time period from last year alone. 23,000, more than twice from the same time period last year. We've taken over 6,000 illegal firearms off the streets. That number is an exponential increase. We've identified and located more than 4,700 child victims. More than 4,700 child victims have been found by this FBI. That is a 35% increase from the same time period last year. 1,500 child predators have been arrested. That's a 5% increase from the same time last year. 300 human traffickers have been arrested. That's a 10% increase from the same time last year. Over 350 members of Tren de Aragua, foreign terrorist organization, have been arrested, and we have 42 ongoing cases. That is a 250% increase from the same time last year. Those are just some of the things the FBI is doing differently and better because we are leading the mission to crush violent crime and defend the homeland. We have also arrested captured four top 10 fugitives from the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. To put that in perspective, that's the same amount I've captured in 7 months than my predecessor did during the entirety of the Biden administration. Those are real results, and the credit is to the men and women at the FBI. We've been able to achieve these results because the FBI recognizes violent crime doesn't just happen in Washington, D.C. That's why one of my first decisions as a director was to get the people, the Bureau's professional staff, out to the field. And we've done that with great speed. And every single one of your districts and states has received a plus-up of FBI personnel, agents, and special operators to the tune of almost 1,000. We did that because crime had unexpectedly and unacceptably exploded across the country. In fact, one of the stats that the American people should thank the FBI the most for is we are on track to have the lowest murder rate in modern American history. The lowest murder rate by double-digit percentages. A major factor in the drop of this violent crime is the FBI's flagship Operation Summer Heat. We use this initiative at the direction of the President and the Attorney General, surging resources to our major and mid-major cities across America, conducting intelligence-based operations to target the worst of the worst, to target the gangs, to target the transnational organizations, to target the TCOs, and to target the drug trafficking cartels. And we have taken them out city by city. There's a lot of work left to be done, but we're off to a great start. Just ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, and so many more places. Specifically in New Orleans and Nashville alone, there has been an increase in the number of violent crime arrests by an average of 250% for each of those cities. And there has been a drastic reduction in crime across the board in mid-major cities across this country, thanks to the men and women of the FBI. How are we doing that? We are attacking the drug epidemic. We've seized nearly 1,000 kilograms of meth and cocaine off the streets of America. We've taken over 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets. Maybe one of the greatest achievements we have this year, 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl. That's a 25% increase from the same time last year. To put things in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill a third of the American populace, 115 million Americans. We're also going after the companies that manufacture these precursors overseas in places like mainland China and their cutting agents. In fact, this month in Cincinnati, we announced groundbreaking charges aimed at the individuals and businesses responsible for flooding these opioids and their precursors and cutting agents into the streets of America. And for the first time that I can remember, we are charging these businesses and enterprises, not just in America, but in mainland China, and seizing their operational necessity to have money by seizing their cryptocurrency wallets. We're also equally important to protecting the homeland. We know we have a no-fail mission. We're committed to keeping our nation safe from terrorism, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries. Whether stopping threats inspired by foreign terrorist organizations or lone wolf actors or sponsored by hostile nation states. This year, we've already made nearly 60 counterintelligence arrests. 60 counterintelligence arrests this year alone is a 30% increase from the same time period last year for the CI work at the FBI. I'm proud when we can share our successes, such as when an espionage charge was brought against an active duty U.S. Navy sailor caught spying for the People's Republic of China. But I want the American people to know the FBI is protecting the homeland from foreign adversaries in a way that will never make the news, and a lot of the good work that they do will never be able to discuss in this setting. We're working on cyber threats. We're attacking malware infrastructure, going after ransomware attackers, delivering a new partnership with the private public sector engagements we've taken with the companies who are attacked by these foreign adversaries and nation-state actors and individual enterprise rings from around the world. We're combating Salt Typhoon, Vault Typhoon, Flax Typhoon, and so many other ransomware and cyber threats this nation faces. We're also arresting people such as Tajik national in Brooklyn, who is suspected of sending tens of thousands of dollars to support ISIS. We're going after the new form of what I refer to as modern-day terrorism in America, 764 crimes that involve harming our children by going after them online, causing self-mutilation, suicide, sexual abuse, and steering them in the wrong direction. Currently, we have 3,500 international terrorism investigations. Specifically, we have in this country 1,700 domestic terrorism investigations, a large chunk of which are nihilistic violent extremism, NVE. Those who engage in violent acts motivated by a deep hatred of society, whatever that justification they seem is. The FBI has seen a 300% increase in cases opened this year alone versus the same time last year. In the last couple of months, the FBI secured a guilty plea for a man in Tennessee who attacked an energy facility with drones and explosives. We secured the indictment of a violent Sinaloa cartel faction leader in Chicago on narco-terrorism charges. Our folks in Sacramento collaborated with domestic and international partners to secure a guilty plea for a leader of a transnational terrorist organization who solicited the murder of federal officials. But the Bureau's job is not done. I'm committed to this transparency. Mr. Chairman, you alluded to our work with Congress. To date, in the 7 months that I've been FBI director, we have produced 33,000 pages to the United States Congress, 33,000 pages. Just to put that in perspective, my predecessor in his 7-year term issued 13,000 pages to Congress, and his predecessor in his 4-year term issued 3,000 pages to Congress. I've issued 33,000 pages in 7 months, and we're going to keep going. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust that the public has and needs in the integrity at the FBI, and it's being done every day by the men and women of the FBI. Now, I know that there's a lot of talk about Epstein, and I'm here to testify that the original sin in the Epstein case was the way it was initially brought by Mr. Acosta back in 2006. The original case involved a very limited search warrant or set of search warrants and didn't take as much investigatory material it should have seized. If I were the FBI director then, it wouldn't have happened. The search warrants were limited to small time periods to include 2002 to 2005 and 1997 to 2001. Mr. Acosta allowed Epstein to enter in 2008 to a plea and non-prosecution agreement, which then the courts issued mandates and protective orders legally prohibiting anyone from ever seeing that material ever again without the permission of the court. The non-prosecution agreements also barred future prosecutions for those involved at that time of those individuals. Still, this administration, at the direction of President Trump, has done more to turn over all the credible information we are legally able to do so, and we will continue to work with Congress to achieve that end. Under the direction of the President, thank you for your support for our mission to working to jointly deliver transparency and congressional oversight to the United States. Lastly, I want to close with the President's initiative here in Washington, D.C. as an example of what we're doing around the country. And I think our next city is Memphis. 21,000 arrests in D.C. with our federal partners, a huge decrease in violent crime, 60% decrease in gun crimes in Washington, D.C. in the last month, 74% decrease in carjackings in Washington, D.C. in the last month. 53% decrease in homicides in Washington, D.C. in the last month. The drugs are disappearing, people are freely walking around the states, and we're restoring the nation's capital to its glory. That work is through the interagency process that the FBI is proud to be a part of, and the initiative spearheaded by President Trump and the Attorney General. And perhaps most notably for investigations in Washington itself, it was the intelligence that the FBI gathered through our source network here in D.C. that helped us identify the suspects in the horrific murder of the D.C. intern Eric Tarpinian. We're proud to be a part of that investigation. We're proud to put the resources to bear of the FBI. And in closing, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and Ranking Member Durbin, I'm honored to be the 9th director of the FBI. I'm not going anywhere. If you want to criticize my 16 years of service, please bring it on. Over to you.
I've observed when, whether it's Republican or Democrats, want a yes or no answer, that the witness and the senators talking over each other. So I thought what I'd do this time, rather than have that happen, if there's something you don't get a chance to answer because of the demeanor of a Republican or Democrat senator, before we, when we get done with that questioner, I'd give you a chance to fill in if there's something you didn't get a chance to say. Since 2019, I've sought greater transparency about Jeffrey Epstein and the government handling of the matter. I've continued to investigate during this Congress. Director Patel, was Jeffrey Epstein an intelligence asset for the United States government or the foreign government? And if so, which agencies or governments?
Mr. Chairman, I can only speak to the FBI as the director of the FBI, and Mr. Epstein was not a source for the FBI.
Okay. Would you commit to providing my office with all classified and unclassified records relating to the Epstein matter?
I will commit to providing all records I'm legally permitted to do so under the court orders.
It seems to me that I accept your answer to my question, but the broader intelligence community ought to answer these questions as well. Victims deserve an answer. Regarding the initial FBI 1023 document that I made public last Congress, that document mentioned 1, text messages, 2, audio recordings, and 3, financial records that allegedly proved a bribery scheme with the Biden family and foreign interests. Regarding those records, did the Ray FBI make any effort to determine whether they existed? Did the Ray FBI make any effort to obtain those records?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Chairman.
Since this matter hasn't been fully investigated, the FBI has an obligation to the public to do exactly that and figure out why it wasn't investigated. Next question. I've done a lot of oversight relating to sexual misconduct by the FBI agents. In fact, I believe this is something I discussed with Ray, one of his appearances before this committee. According to the FBI Inspection Division, it opened nearly 300 investigations based on sexual misconduct referrals between 2017 and 2024. According to whistleblowers, the Biden-Ray FBI totally dropped the ball on this question. One credible accusation of sexual misconduct is too many, of course. Are you committed to reviewing the Bureau's policies to ensure responsible responses to credible allegations of misconduct, that they're swift and adequately protect victims?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Relating to a similar subject, during child crimes and sexual misconduct related investigations, are any private sector companies less than cooperative with you What improvements in information sharing need to be made to catch those criminals?
Mr. Chairman, we can always do better with our private sector companies. I've reached out to the leaders of most of them, asking them to provide more material so that we can be responsive and take legal action and protect the youth of this country. I'm happy to discuss, possible legislation that we can do to allow for these companies to continue.
Yeah. Say, maybe 1 inch up on the microphone.
Sorry.
I think you're close enough, but I think it's just a little bit lower. When you raise your head, it's difficult to hear. Director Patel, since 2021, I've raised concerns about the Biden administration failure to properly vet Afghan evacuees. Director Gabbard informed my office that as of August 2022, approximately 1,600 evacuees located in the United States had ties to terrorism and other derogatory information. That's why I and many others have opposed bills giving blanket approval. Are you aware of what steps your predecessor took to investigate these evacuees? And what steps have you taken to investigate them? And what, if any, national security concerns still exist?
Mr. Chairman, I can't speak to the steps my predecessor took, but I will make sure we do a sweeping review and get back to you on that. As far as the Afghan refugees and evacuees, as during my tenure, we are going through the databases to make sure that no known or suspected terrorists enter this country to harm our nation. And also, as my resolve as FBI director, one of the first acts we undertook was a manhunt of one of the Abbey Gate bombers and leaders in that crime spree that killed 13 brave Americans. And within 2 weeks, we caught one of the leaders of the Abbey Gate bomber and brought him to justice here in 2 weeks from Pakistan. And so my commitment to you on Afghanistan in all matters is complete and without border.
Yeah. Through my and other investigations, we found that the Biden administration lost thousands of undocumented children. We never heard a peep from senators wanting to help find them, even after I invited them to do so. In September 2025, the